I was desperate for a roommate. My ex had moved out 3 months earlier, leaving me with a 2-bedroom apartment I couldn't afford on my own. I'd posted on every platform I could think of, but the responses were either from obvious creeps or people who ghosted me after seeing the place. Then I got a message from Sarah. Her email was polite, professional even. She was 26, worked remotely in graphic design, and could move in immediately. She offered to pay first month's rent up front, which honestly sealed the deal for me. We arranged to meet that weekend. Sarah showed up exactly on time. She was pretty in an understated way. Shoulder-length brown hair, simple clothes, soft-spoken. She walked through the apartment nodding approvingly, asked reasonable questions about utilities and parking. Within an hour, she'd handed me cash and we'd shaken hands. "This is perfect," she said, smiling. "I've been looking for somewhere quiet." The first month was bliss. Sarah kept to herself, cleaned up after herself, and always paid her share of everything without me having to ask. She worked from the second bedroom during the day, and I'd hear the faint clicking of her keyboard through the walls. Sometimes I'd come home to find she'd done dishes or taken out trash. I felt like I'd won the roommate lottery. It was around week 5 that I noticed the smell. At first, I thought maybe something had died in the walls, an old building problem. But it seemed to be coming from Sarah's room, a sweet cloying odor that reminded me of flowers left too long in water. I mentioned it casually one evening. "Oh, that's probably my aromatherapy oils," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "Sorry if it's too strong. I can tone it down." The smell got worse. I started paying more attention to Sarah's habits. She never seemed to leave the apartment except for brief trips to the corner store. No friends visited. She never talked on the phone that I could hear. When I asked about her work, she'd give vague answers about freelance projects and change the subject. The smell was becoming unbearable. It wasn't floral anymore. There was something underneath, something rotten. I bought air fresheners, opened windows, even lit candles, but nothing helped. It seemed to seep through the walls. One night, I heard movement in Sarah's room around 3 a.m. Not unusual, she kept odd hours. But this was different. A dragging sound like furniture being moved. Then silence. In the morning, I mentioned hearing something. "Just rearranging," she said. "Hope I didn't wake you." But her eyes didn't meet mine. I started finding things, small things, hair that wasn't mine or Sarah's clogging the shower drain. Long, black hair that came out in clumps. Muddy footprints in the bathroom that appeared overnight, even though neither of us had been outside. Food disappearing from the fridge, not stolen, just used up faster than 2 people should go through it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. I woke up around 2 a.m. needing water. As I passed Sarah's room, I heard voices. Multiple voices, having what sounded like a conversation. I pressed my ear to the door. Sarah's familiar voice, yes, but also others. A man's voice, deep and raspy. A woman with a slight accent I couldn't place. Sometimes they seemed to overlap, talking over each other in urgent whispers. I knocked softly. "Sarah, everything okay?" Immediate silence, then footsteps, and the door opened a crack. Sarah peered out, fully dressed despite the hour. "Just watching a movie," she said. "Sorry if it was loud." But I could see past her into the room. No TV, no laptop open, just Sarah, standing there in the dark. The next day, I made a decision. I waited until I heard Sarah leave, then used my spare key to check her room. I told myself I was just looking for the source of the smell, maybe a dead mouse or spoiled food. The room was empty. Not just empty, completely empty. No bed, no furniture, no belongings, nothing. Just bare walls and carpet. But the smell was overwhelming here, so strong I had to cover my nose with my shirt. In the closet, I found them. Photographs, hundreds of them, taped to the walls and scattered on the floor. Pictures of people sleeping. People in their homes, unaware they were being watched. Men, women, families. Some photos were taken through windows. Others seemed to be from inside houses. All of them had the same quality. Intimate, invasive, wrong. And there, near the back of the closet, were photos of me. Me sleeping in my bed. Me watching TV in the living room. Me in the shower, though I couldn't figure out how she'd taken those. Underneath the photos was a notebook. Pages and pages of handwriting in different styles, as if written by different people. Names, addresses, daily routines, details about strangers' lives written in obsessive detail. At the bottom of one page, in Sarah's handwriting. Next, downstairs neighbor, works late shifts, lives alone. I heard the front door open. I shoved everything back, closed the closet, and slipped out of the room. Sarah was in the kitchen, putting groceries away as if nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked pleasantly. I mumbled something about work and locked myself in my room. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the sounds from her room, the voices again, multiple conversations happening simultaneously. And sometime around dawn, I heard my doorknob turn slowly. I'd locked it, thank God. The handle turned back and forth for almost a minute before stopping. I moved out the next week. Told Sarah I'd gotten a job in another city, needed to break the lease early. She seemed disappointed but understanding. Even helped me load boxes into my car, chatting about how she'd miss having such a great roommate. As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, standing in the building's entrance. She wasn't alone. There were two other people with her. A tall man and a woman with dark hair. They were all watching my car disappear down the street. I tried calling the landlord later to warn him about Sarah, but he said she'd moved out the same day I did, left no forwarding address. The apartment was empty when he checked. No sign anyone had ever lived there. I still check Craigslist sometimes, out of morbid curiosity. I've never seen another post from Sarah, but occasionally I'll see ads for roommates that sound familiar. Same polite professional tone. Same promise to pay up front. Last month, I found a post that made my blood run cold. Quiet, responsible female seeking roommate. Clean, reliable, and respectful of privacy. Can move in immediately. The email address was different, but something about the phrasing reminded me of Sarah. I almost replied, just to see. Instead, I reported the post and tried to forget about it. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder about those other people in the photos. I wonder if they ever found out they were being watched. And I wonder who's living in Sarah's new place now, thinking they found the perfect roommate. The antique desk caught my eye immediately. Dark wood, ornate carvings, definitely old enough to be worth something. The Craigslist post was brief. Antique writing desk, excellent condition, $200 OBO, must pick up today. I've been flipping furniture for extra cash, and this looked like a steal. The address was in an older part of town, big Victorian houses that had seen better days. I called the number and got an elderly man with a shaky voice. Yes, the desk. You can come look at it. I'm home all day. The house was exactly what I'd expected. Towering, narrow, with peeling paint and overgrown hedges. The man who answered the door was probably in his 70s, thin and stooped, wearing a cardigan despite the warm weather. You'll hear about the desk, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm Harold. Come in. The inside of the house was dark, heavy curtains blocking most of the sunlight. But what struck me immediately was how crowded it was. Every surface was covered with objects, vases, figurines, books, lamps, picture frames. It was like walking through an antique store, except everything was dusty and seemed randomly placed. Quite a collection, I said, trying to make conversation. Harold nodded slowly. 40 years of collecting. My wife used to say I had a problem. He paused. She's gone now. The desk was in what might have once been a dining room, though it was hard to tell with all the clutter. It was beautiful. Deep mahogany with intricate rose carvings along the edges. Definitely worth more than $200. It belonged to my wife's grandmother, Harold said, running his fingers along the wood. She used to write letters at it every morning, but I need the space. I examined it carefully. The wood was in excellent condition. All the drawers slid smoothly. The brass handles were original. It was a genuine antique, probably early 1900s. I'll take it, I said. Harold seemed relieved. Good. I'm glad it's going to someone who appreciates old things. As I was writing the check, I noticed something odd. The desk had 4 drawers, but one of them seemed slightly different. The wood grain didn't quite match, and the handle was positioned just a millimeter off from the others. Is this drawer original? I asked, pointing it out. Harold's expression changed. For just a moment, he looked almost frightened. Then he forced a smile. Oh, that old thing had some damage when we got it. Had to have it repaired years ago. Something in his tone made me uneasy, but the price was too good to pass up. We arranged for me to pick it up the next day with my truck. That night, I did some research on similar desks online. What I found made me excited. Comparable pieces were selling for $800 to $1,000. I'd made a great find. I picked up the desk the following evening. Harold helped me load it, though he could barely lift his end. As we were securing it in the truck bed, he grabbed my arm. Promise me something, he said, his grip surprisingly strong. Don't go looking through it too carefully. Some things are better left alone. I laughed it off. Sure, Harold. Thanks again. But as I drove away, I saw him in my rearview mirror, standing in his doorway, watching until I turned the corner. At home, I carried the desk into my garage workshop. Under proper lighting, it was even more beautiful than I'd thought. I started cleaning it carefully, planning to list it online within a week. That's when I discovered the secret compartment. I was checking the drawer's alignment when I noticed the bottom drawer didn't slide all the way back. There was something blocking it. When I pulled the drawer completely out, I found a small wooden panel at the back that could be slid aside. Behind it was a space about 6 inches deep, and it wasn't empty. There were letters, maybe 20 of them, tied with a faded ribbon. The envelopes were yellowed with age, all addressed to the same person, Margaret Holloway. The return addresses were different, but all from the 1940s. I knew I shouldn't read them. These were someone's private correspondence. but curiosity got the better of me. The first letter was from a soldier overseas, presumably Margaret's husband or boyfriend. Sweet, romantic, talking about coming home after the war. Nothing unusual. The second letter was from the same man, but the tone was different, worried. He'd heard rumours that Margaret was seeing someone else while he was away. The third letter was angry, accusatory. He'd received confirmation that Margaret was having an affair. As I read through them chronologically, I watched the relationship deteriorate through words on paper. The man's letters became increasingly desperate, then furious, then threatening. The last letter was different. It wasn't from the soldier. It was from Margaret. But it wasn't sent. It was a draft, written in pencil on stationery that matched the desk. The handwriting was shaky, panicked. "I know you're reading my letters. I know you've been watching me. Please leave me alone. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. What happened to James wasn't my fault. He came home angry. He was drunk. He wouldn't listen. It was self-defense. Please don't tell anyone. I'll do anything." My hands were shaking as I read it. This wasn't just old correspondence. This was evidence of something terrible. I looked at the date on Margaret's letter. It was dated 3 days after the last letter from the soldier. I spent the next hour searching online for any information about Margaret Holloway in the 1940s. What I found made my stomach turn. A newspaper article from 1943. Local woman missing after husband's death. Margaret Holloway had disappeared shortly after her husband James was found dead in their home. The death was initially ruled accidental, a drunken fall down the stairs. Margaret was never found, but there was more. Another article from 1985. Human remains found during home renovation. Construction workers had discovered bones buried in the basement of a house that had once belonged to Margaret Holloway. The remains were confirmed to be hers. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the skull. I stared at the letters scattered on my workbench. Someone had killed Margaret, but not before reading her correspondence. Someone who knew about her husband's death, who had used that knowledge to terrorize her. And then I realized something that made me sick. The house where Margaret's remains were found. I recognized the address from the old newspaper. It was Harold's house. I called Harold's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later, then again before bed. No answer. The next morning, I drove back to Harold's house. I had to return the letters. They were evidence. They belonged in a police station, not hidden in an old desk. The house looked different in daylight, more rundown, more ominous. I knocked on the front door. No answer. I tried the doorbell, knocked louder. Nothing. A neighbor was working in her yard next door. I walked over to her. "Excuse me, do you know if Harold is around? I was supposed to pick something up from him." She looked confused. "Harold? Honey, Harold died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. His nephew's been cleaning out the house, selling everything off." My blood went cold. 3 weeks ago? Yeah, poor thing. Lived alone for so long after his wife passed. Found him in his living room, surrounded by all that junk he collected. I felt dizzy. His wife? How long ago did she die? Oh, she's been gone 40 years at least. Tragic story. She just disappeared one day. Never did find out what happened to her. I stumbled back to my truck, the woman still talking behind me. My mind was racing. If Harold had died 3 weeks ago, who had I bought the desk from? I drove home and immediately started researching. I found Harold's obituary online. He died exactly 19 days before I'd called about the desk. The photos showed the same man I'd met, or thought I'd met. That evening, I sat in my garage staring at the desk and the letters. I should call the police, report what I'd found. But how could I explain buying furniture from a dead man? As darkness fell, I decided to load the desk back into my truck. I'd drive it back to Harold's house, leave it on the porch with the letters, let someone else deal with this. But when I tried to move the desk, I couldn't. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I checked underneath, nothing holding it down, but it wouldn't budge. That's when I heard the voice. You shouldn't have opened it. I spun around. There was a woman standing in my garage doorway, middle-aged, wearing clothes that looked decades out of style. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. The letters weren't meant to be found, she said, stepping closer. He promised me they were safe. Are you Margaret? I whispered. She nodded slowly. Harold kept my secret for 40 years. Even when the police came asking questions, even when they found my body, he never told them about the letters. But Harold's dead. Yes, she said sadly. And now the secret isn't safe anymore. I looked at the letters on my workbench. What really happened? Harold was my neighbor. A young man then, sweet on me. He saw everything the night James came home. Saw me push him down the stairs, saw me panic. He helped me bury James in the backyard, told everyone James had left town. And then, Harold wanted something in return. He wanted me. When I refused, when I tried to leave town, he couldn't let me go. He kept me in his basement for weeks, kept telling me he loved me, that we could be together. I felt sick. He killed you. It wasn't supposed to happen that way, but I kept trying to escape, kept screaming. One night, he lost his temper. She touched the side of her head, and I saw her fingers come away dark. He buried me next to James, kept my letters as souvenirs. Why now? Why are you here? Because Harold's gone, and the house is being sold. Someone would have found the letters eventually, but you found them first. She moved closer, and the temperature in the garage dropped noticeably. Harold made me a promise before he died. He said if anyone ever found out the truth, he'd make sure they couldn't tell anyone. Harold's dead, I repeated, but my voice was shaking. Margaret smiled, but it was Harold's voice that came out of her mouth. Death doesn't end the collection, son. It just makes it permanent. The desk drawers started opening and closing on their own. The letters on my workbench scattered in a wind I couldn't feel. And Margaret, or whatever she was now, reached toward me with fingers that were too long, too pale, too cold. I ran. I made it to my truck and drove straight to a hotel. The next morning, I called a junk removal company and had them clear out my entire garage. I told them to take everything to the dump, especially an old desk. But they called me back that afternoon. Sir, there's no desk in your garage, just some old letters scattered on your workbench. You want us to trash those too? I never went back to the house. I moved across the state, found a new job, started over. But sometimes, late at night, I'll get emails forwarded from my old address. Craigslist notifications about antique furniture for sale. The listings are always posted by someone named Harold, and they're always for desks. Beautiful, antique desks with secret compartments. Great prices, must pick up today. I delete them without reading the full descriptions, but I know what they say. Some collections never end. I was unemployed for 6 months when I found the listing. Not just unemployed, desperate. My savings were gone. My unemployment benefits had run out, and I was 2 weeks from eviction. I'd applied to hundreds of jobs, gone on dozens of interviews, but nothing was sticking. The Craigslist post was in the gigs section, not regular employment. Personal assistant needed, flexible hours, good pay, start immediately, discretion required. The email address was generic, workopportunity2024@gmail.com, but I was past being picky. I sent my resume with a brief cover letter, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. The response came within an hour. Thank you for your interest. Please come to 1247 Oak Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. for an interview. Ask for Mr. Reeves. Come alone. The address was in an office building downtown. Nothing fancy, but professional looking. I showed up 10 minutes early, wearing my best suit, hoping this would finally be the break I needed. The lobby was typical. Marble floors, generic art, a security desk. I asked the guard about Mr. Reeves. 17th floor, he said without looking up. Elevators to your right. The elevator was slow and loud. When the doors opened on the 17th floor, I was surprised to find a long, empty hallway with fluorescent lighting and beige carpet. No company signs, no reception desk. Just numbered doors stretching in both directions. I walked until I found 1717, which seemed to be the only door with a light underneath. I knocked. Come in. The office was small and windowless, furnished with just a metal desk and 2 chairs. The man behind the desk was probably 50, average height, thinning hair, wearing a rumpled suit. He looked up from a file folder and smiled. You must be David. I'm Mr. Reeves, please sit. I sat down, trying to get a read on him. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint what. Maybe it was the office, too sparse, too impersonal. Or maybe it was how he'd used my name even though I hadn't introduced myself yet. Thank you for coming, he said, closing the folder. I've reviewed your resume. Impressive background. Thank you, sir. I have to say, the job posting was a bit vague. Could you tell me more about what the position involves? Mr. Reeves leaned back in his chair. Of course, I represent several clients who require various services. Data entry, research, phone calls, errands. The work varies, but it's well compensated. What kind of clients? Business people, entrepreneurs, individuals who value their privacy. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. The pay is $500 per week, cash. No taxes, no paperwork. Interested? $500 cash was more than I'd made at my last job after taxes. It seemed too good to be true. That's very generous, I said carefully. What would be expected of me? Flexibility, availability, and most importantly, discretion. He slid the envelope across the desk. This is your first week's pay in advance. Consider it a sign of good faith. I stared at the envelope, not touching it. I haven't agreed to anything yet. Of course not, but I believe in showing trust to get trust. He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Why don't you take the money, go home, think about it. If you decide you're interested, I'll call you tomorrow with your first assignment. Every instinct I had was telling me to walk away, but $500 was sitting right there, and my rent was due in 4 days. What kind of assignments? Nothing illegal, if that's what you're worried about. Mostly information gathering. Phone calls to verify details about people. Background research using public records. Simple stuff. I picked up the envelope. It was thick, definitely cash. And if I take this and decide I'm not interested, keep it. Consider it payment for your time today. That should have been my first red flag. Nobody gives away $500 for a 30-minute interview. But I was desperate, and desperation makes you rationalize things you'd normally question. Okay, I said. I'll think about it. Excellent. I'll be in touch. I left the building with the envelope in my jacket pocket, feeling like I just made either the best or worst decision of my life. At home, I counted the money. $500 exactly, all 20s. Real bills, not counterfeit. I paid my overdue rent and bought groceries for the first time in weeks. Mr. Reeves called the next morning. David, I hope you've decided to join our team. I think so, yes. Wonderful. Your first assignment is simple. I need you to call this number and ask for information about a person named Michael Jones. Say you're updating records for an alumni directory. Get his current address and employment information. He gave me the number and Michael Jones's details. Age, college graduation year, last known address. It seemed harmless enough. The call was easy. I reached a woman who was happy to help with what she thought was legitimate alumni outreach. Michael Jones was now living in Portland, working as an accountant at a firm downtown. She gave me his current address and phone number without hesitation. I called Mr. Reeves back with the information. Perfect, he said. You'll receive next week's payment tomorrow. I'll have another assignment for you soon. This went on for 3 weeks. Simple research tasks, phone calls to gather information about various people. The pay came exactly when promised, always in cash, always left in my mailbox in an unmarked envelope. The assignments got progressively stranger. Week 4, I was asked to drive by someone's house and note what cars were in the driveway, what lights were on, whether anyone was home. Week 5, I had to call a woman pretending to be from her credit card company, asking her to verify her address and employment for security purposes. By week 6, I knew I was helping someone stalk people. The breaking point came when Mr. Reeves asked me to apply for a job at a specific company. Just go through the interview process, he said. Get as far as you can. I need to know about their hiring practices, what questions they ask, what kind of background checks they run. Why? A client is interested in working there. They want to be prepared. But the company he named was a small accounting firm, the same firm where Michael Jones worked. I started putting the pieces together. All the people I'd been researching, all the information I'd gathered, they were all connected somehow. Same neighborhoods, same workplaces, same social circles. That night, I did some research of my own. I Googled Mr. Reeves, the office building address, the phone number he'd been calling me from. Nothing came up. It was like he didn't exist. I decided to go back to the office building and ask some questions. The security guard from my first visit was there. I walked up to his desk casually. Hey, I'm supposed to meet with Mr. Reeves on 17 again. He around today? The guard looked confused. Mr. Reeves? I don't know any Mr. Reeves. What company? I'm not sure of the company name. Office 1717. Son, 1717 has been empty for 8 months. Whole floor's been vacant since the last tenant moved out. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I was just there last week. You sure you got the right building? I rode the elevator to the 17th floor. The hallway was exactly as I remembered, but when I reached 1717, the door was locked. I peered through the frosted glass. The office was completely empty. No desk, no chairs, nothing. I tried calling Mr. Reeves. The number was disconnected. That evening, I went online and searched for news stories about the people I'd been researching. It took a while, but I found what I was looking for. Michael Jones had been murdered 3 weeks ago, shot outside his apartment building in Portland. No suspects. Sarah Martinez, another person I'd researched, had been found dead in her car 2 weeks ago. Apparent suicide, according to the police report, but her family insisted she'd never shown signs of depression. James Walsh, whose employment information I'd verified in week 2, had died in what police called a home invasion gone wrong. Nothing was stolen. 7 people. 7 people I'd helped someone track down. 7 people who are now dead. I sat in my apartment, staring at the stack of cash I'd earned, and realized I'd been working for a killer. I called the police the next morning and told them everything. They were skeptical at first. My story sounded insane. But when I showed them the detailed information I'd gathered on each victim, they started taking me seriously. The detective assigned to the case was a woman named Rodriguez. She was kind, but direct. David, you understand you could be charged as an accessory, right? You helped someone plan these murders. I know. I needed the money. I thought it was just research. We're going to need you to cooperate fully. Tell us everything you remember about this Mr. Reeves. I told her everything, but there wasn't much to go on. A fake name, a fake office, a disconnected phone number. The cash payments couldn't be traced. I was the only person who'd ever seen him, and I couldn't even give a detailed description. He was so aggressively average looking. Detective Rodriguez worked the case for 6 months. They never found Mr. Reeves. They never even figured out his real name. But the murders stopped. I moved to a different city, changed my phone number, tried to start over. I found legitimate work. Nothing exciting, but honest. I donated the money I'd made, all of it, to victims' rights organizations. For 2 years, I thought it was over. Then last month, I got an email at my new address, which I'd never given to anyone from my old life. David, I hope you're well. I have a new opportunity that might interest you. The pay is better than before, and the work is simpler. If you're interested, please come to 892 Pine Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. Ask for Mr. Stevens. Come alone. I deleted the email immediately, but I kept thinking about it. That night, I drove by 892 Pine Street. It was another office building, older than the last one, but similar. I sat in my car across the street for an hour, watching people go in and out. At exactly 2 p.m., I saw someone I recognized walking toward the building entrance. A young woman, probably in her 20s, wearing a business suit and carrying a resume folder. She looked nervous, hopeful. She looked desperate. I followed her inside and watched her ask the security guard for directions. He pointed toward the elevators. "Mr. Stevens," he said, "15th floor." I called Detective Rodriguez from the parking lot. "He's back," I said. "Different name, different building, but it's him." David, are you sure? I'm sure. And he's recruiting someone new. Rodriguez and her team were there within 20 minutes. They evacuated the building quietly, searched every office on the 15th floor. They found the young woman sitting alone in an empty office, holding an envelope full of cash, looking confused. But they never found Mr. Stevens. The building manager confirmed that the office had been rented just that morning, paid for in cash, by a man matching my description of Mr. Reeves. But the name on the rental agreement was fake, and the address was a vacant lot. The young woman, Jessica, was lucky. Rodriguez scared her straight, showed her what had happened to the people I'd helped track down. Jessica turned over the money and promised to stay far away from any similar opportunities. But I know he's still out there. Mr. Reeves, Mr. Stevens, whatever he's calling himself now, looking for desperate people, people who need money badly enough to ignore red flags. I check Craigslist obsessively now, looking for postings that sound familiar. Personal assistant needed, good pay, start immediately, discretion required. They're out there. Maybe not every week, but regularly enough. Different email addresses, different contact information, but the same basic setup. I forward them all to Detective Rodriguez. She started a task force, reached out to other cities where similar patterns might be emerging. But he's smart, he's careful, and he's patient. The worst part is knowing there are others like me out there. People who answered his ads, took his money, helped him hunt his victims. People who maybe don't even realize what they were part of. If you're reading this, if you've ever been contacted about easy money for simple research tasks, if someone has ever paid you cash to make phone calls or gather information about strangers, please call the police. And if you see a job posting that seems too good to be true, that offers immediate payment for vague work, that emphasizes discretion and coming alone, don't go. No matter how desperate you are, it's not worth it. Some opportunities aren't opportunities at all.